Hare Krishna, everybody. This is Vedic Observer, aka Śāstra-cakṣusā, which means seeing the world through the eyes of the scripture. And we have with us as a co-moderator, Sankirtan Prabhu, longtime resident, Hare Krishna, Sankirtan, of New Vrindaban and a Prabhupada disciple, senior devotee, author, best-selling author of Vedic books, besides Prabhupada's books, I think. At least the best-selling author of Vedic books in New Vrindaban. No, I don't think anybody else has published any books in New Vrindaban, have they? Besides, back in the 90s.
I can't think of anybody recently, no.
Yeah. Well, keep on cranking.
Garga Rishi, who lives in North Carolina now, he put out a book about his experiences here in New Vrindaban over the years.
Oh, okay. I got to read that. Garga Rishi was my, we worked in the mold shop with Sudano. So,
here it is.
Oh, Children of Heart. There he is.
This is Garga Rishi.
Yeah.
And he offered tremendous service to New Vrindaban over the years.
Yes, he did. And I remember a cartoon of him, in different states of consciousness, like in meditation, he had his eyes like slit, and in the beginning of the kirtan, the same expression, and in the wild kirtan, the same expression on his face. He was totally the same in all circumstances as far as his expression on his face. He was a great kirtan leader too.
Yes, he's still involved in chanting, and I think in Asheville, North Carolina, he has groups.
They have a home program. That's a college town. I know that because I worked in Asheville. It's a really nice little college town. They just got hit with floods.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Okay, I was just going to read a little bit of the introduction here about what this meeting is all about.
Go right ahead.
And well, let's see. Oops, there it is. Okay, Prabhupada said back in 1977, I think, that, the name of this is Applying Knowledge According to Time, Place, and Circumstance. That means Deśa, kāla, pātra. Deśa, here's what Prabhupada's definition of that term means. The test of a first-class religion is how followers are developing love of God. It doesn't matter what religion is. It may be Christian religion, Hindu religion, Mohammedan religion. If one is developing love of God, then that system of religion is first class. Of course, every system of religion is nice, but it should be applied according to, quote, Deśa, kāla, pātra. Deśa means country, in other words, place or country. Kāla means time, and pātra means the circumstances or the receiver or the student. Deśa, kāla, pātra. So according to the location of where you are, according to the time and the circumstances or the person that you're speaking to, that is how you receive the knowledge from Krishna, how to preach, how to speak on behalf of Krishna. And Krishna will give us guidance on how to do that. Do you have anything to add about that?
Well, I have a few examples that I'll bring out during the course of our conversation.
Okay.
But I think it's a very important topic, the idea of presenting Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstance. Prabhupada uses that phrase on numerous occasions. And so I have a number of Prabhupada quotes. One that I'd like to share. The entire world is being governed by unwanted men who have no training in religion, politics, or social order, and it is very deplorable condition. Thus society is now in chaos, and there is neither peace nor prosperity. That's from the fourth canto, chapter 14.
Which
And
chapter is that? Is that the Bhishma Dev chapter?
um, no, I have another the grandfather Bhishma Dev chapter is in the first canto,
Oh, okay.
chapter 9, and I also have a quote from that. But Prabhupada does make some subtle distinctions. Just let me give you one example. This is from 1972. And so in 1972, Nixon was the president of the United States. And this is just shortly before the Watergate fandango was exposed under Nixon's administration. But he tells the devotees in a letter, I am very much serious that you all boys and girls should expose these Nixons and remove them. There's ample scope for protest in this Sankirtan movement, and you yourselves be present. That is my hope for saving the misled mankind from total chaos. So here, Prabhupada mentions Nixon on numerous occasions. But the thing is, just because he mentions Nixon in a negative way, it doesn't mean that he's for some Democrat. So he's just giving an example here of the deplorable situation, and he mentions, of course, we all know what he said about democracy, that he referred to it as demon crazy.
Right.
And here's one quote from 1973. This is a year later. We don't very much like this so-called democracy. What is the value of democracy? All fools and rascals. They vote for another fool and rascal, and he becomes prime minister, or this or that. That is not good for the people. We are not for this so-called democracy because they are not trained. So there's no training.
I'd like to raise a question about that. So do you think that Prabhupada had an alternative to democracy as far as like the people having the power? Because everybody in this age, I mean, they had demonic kings since time immemorial, but now we have the rulers that are totally self-interested, and they're just like Swayambhuva Manu was instructed by Kardama Muni, that if you let these kings that are basically after money, I think you've quoted this, then the world will be put into ruin. And so you have to have a strong ruler. So if there is no qualified king, the checks and balances of a democracy, people want self-rule. And actually now the only ever since the founding fathers created this experiment called democracy, it's worked for almost 250 years, but now it's being broken apart. So I think that the alternative to that, which is fascism and racism, actually this whole administration now was run on racism. They thought, well, this is our last chance, if we don't get into power now. So they pulled the race card, basically. And this whole campaign was based on racism. Like the Haitians are eating the dogs and the cats, and these immigrants are coming in. We have to have mass deportation. And so Prabhupada talked about immigration back in 1976 on the 200th anniversary. I'm just actually reading a chapter from Hari Sari's book about how he did a Back to Godhead interview with, Back to Godhead interviewed Prabhupada, and he said, this immigration, like, what is the philosophy behind this? The Europeans came over to America and they said, this is God's property. We're God's children, so we have a right to God's property. And the Indians didn't have a problem with that. And so they came here and they settled on this continent. And then once they settled, they said, well, we don't want any more immigrants. And they don't allow anybody else to come in. And so Prabhupada said, what is that philosophy? What is their philosophy? And the BTG said, there is no philosophy. And he said, this is roguism. You claim something that is not your own. Even the Native Americans, they didn't have any conception of this is my property, this is my land or place of birth. They thought it all belonged to Wankantanga. That was the name of the Great Spirit. And they didn't even have a sense of proprietorship. So it's rogue philosophy. You claim the property as yours, and then you're actually that's a false claim because nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to God.
Well,
So
at one point, Prabhupada said that the United States, there's so much property, so much land lying vacant that anyone should be invited in if they wanted to cultivate the land and grow fruits and vegetables.
absolutely. I mean,
The country's so large.
I was just in New Jersey. I took an Indian family to New York from New Vrindaban after Gorpanim, after Janmashtami. And I was going through the countryside because we had to drop them off, their luggage off at a friend's house in New Jersey. And the New Jersey is supposed to be the most populated state per capita, per square mile in any state in the Union. And so I was driving through the countryside. There's acres and acres as far as you can see of vacant land. And Prabhupada said in that same article, declaring our dependence on God, which was, July 1976, the bicentennial anniversary of America. Coming up, the next year is going to be the 250th anniversary of America, if it's still around. But he said, actually, there's so much overpopulation and they can't feed this. So why doesn't if there's some Chinese people or Indian people and they need some land, why doesn't the American people, the government, just tell them to come here and cultivate their own land, and the result would be wonderful. But they don't do that.
No, Prabhupada was very practical in that way.
Yeah.
That he wanted to make sure that there was a proper outlet for people to work according to their propensities and to assist the society in one way or another.
Yeah.
So we're kind of cutting off and lowering the gates on that type of mentality.
Yeah, they wanted to go to see the Statue of Liberty. Are you familiar with the plaque on the Statue of Liberty? Bring me your poor, your huddled masses, longing to be free. And then we'll deport them. I think the president would then we'll deport you after you get here. All the black and brown people, at least, because those are the only ones that are being deported now. I actually read something today that was published today about Nixon. I wanted to add to your comment about that. Let me share this
Okay.
because this was written today and they actually wrote a song about it too. But let me share this screen with you. There was a raid today on a senior official, the John Bolton. His home was raided today on a very high-profile fishing expedition to find out if he had any classified documents. Of course, he can't do that. But, Trump had a trove in his bathroom for access to anybody's perusal in his bathroom and in his ballroom. They were just like thrown all over the floor, and stacked up as high as a ceiling. And there were classified documents in there, but he didn't get. It's okay if he does it, but not John Bolton. He needs a lawyer because it says with the raid on John Bolton's home, it looks like we may have reached a stage when fascist governments begin to turn against their critics, weaponizing the tools of the police state. I mean, John Bolton, he's so conservative that he said his quote is that the top 10 floors of the United Nations, if they lopped the United Nations off, it wouldn't make any difference at all. And he is like one of the most conservative people in the security administration. And then, okay, Rick, this is like an enemies list. They're going after their enemies now. And Nixon went after his enemies too. You probably remember, I remember his enemies list in the depths of the Watergate scandal that I remember seeing the video clip, when the president does it, then it means it is not illegal. Remember that? He discovered the hard way that wasn't true though, back in the 1970s. That was like 50 years ago. More than 70 people connected to his White House and campaign were indicted, and many went to prison. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, John Dean, John Mitchell, Special Counsel
Okay.
Charles Colson, and
Right.
several members of Nixon's Committee to Re-elect the President, better known as CREEP, for their crimes of burglary, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Nixon himself escaped accountability only because Gerald Ford pardoned him. So the pardon power is very powerful, and you can get away with and pretty much the current president has been given full immunity for anything that he does while in office by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has been taken over by people that agree with this dictatorial state. They don't believe in democracy, and I have to humbly submit. I mean, I would need clarification on this, but what is the alternative to democracy in this age? Let me just stop this sharing so we can see each other here.
Yeah. But the thing is this. Let me finish first of all. Just like I have these three different letters by Prabhupada, and they're all presenting a little different perspective. One is utilizing the Sankirtan movement to get rid of these rogue miscreants in office like Nixon. And the second letter that was from 72, and the second letter from 73 is a letter about the mentality of the United States as demon crazy. We don't have proper trained officials, and neither do we have a citizenry that is really trained to understand what are the principles of leadership and how to elect a proper leader. So Prabhupada calls it demon crazy.
Yes,
And
we have to educate the citizens, though, that our duty as devotees is to educate the principles
yes,
and
he meant
the mode of goodness so that we can understand what is favorable for Krishna's service. They might not be totally devotees. One guru said to me, one big ISKCON guru said, unless these candidates are aligned totally with Srila Prabhupada, then we shouldn't even have anything to do with it. In fact, the GBC should make a ruling that we shouldn't have anything to do with picking or even, telling the public who to vote for or anything like that, unless they're totally aligned with Prabhupada. So good luck with that. We have to take the best use of a bad bargain. We have to make
exactly.
we have to, if it's raining outside, you cover your head. And so you don't want to pick a child molester for a babysitter. You have to make choices in this material world and protect yourself and your family and the nation against these rogues and thieves. That's what the Brahmanas did after King Venu left his body, and there were rogues and thieves running around. So they had to churn a king, and they did. I don't know. I have no idea what churning means. They take his limbs and put him in a pot or something, and then out comes the personality of Godhead. I mean, that's way beyond my pay grade. I don't know what that means.
Let me read the third letter here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because there is a progression, and since the theme of our little presentation today is, presentation of Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstance.
Exactly.
these three letters each have a different mood to them. And so the second letter, like I said, basically dismisses a democracy as demon crazy. But then when Nixon is removed from office, he's thrown out of the government, and this is a letter from 1974.
Right.
And Prabhupada actually is very hopeful. He said, in your country, there is a good system of democracy. Before, a year before that, he was calling it demon crazy. But now he's saying, in your country, there's a very good system of democracy. As we have just seen recently, the people, as the common people have so much power, that they were able to get down this Nixon, who is obviously a rascal. So if we can simply convince a good majority of persons, then they will automatically want a Krishna conscious leader. So Prabhupada was very hopeful that democracy can work, because even though Prabhupada was talking about the ancient Vedic culture, and he was talking about a divine monarchy, the Raja Rishis, the rule of the monarchs who were saintly personalities and could rule properly, but they were ruling with the aid of the Brahmins. They weren't ruling themselves.
The head of society is the Brahmanas, and they would always, I think Varshana Swami, he said one time, he said, the worst kind of leader is the person that doesn't take, he either thinks that he's the smartest, I alone can fix it, or something like that, I alone can do these things, and he doesn't even listen to people that have advice, or they think the same thing as him. Like they're not submissive to any other authority beside their own mind.
But another example that Prabhupada gives is in the story of the Qazi. Now, the Qazi, he's the governor of Nadia 500 years ago in Bengal, the district of Nadia, where Lord Chaitanya was very active, where he was born. And so when the Sankirtan movement started, the chanting of the holy name, the Qazi came along and he forbade the chanting.
People were complaining.
Not the Hindus and the Muslims, all sectors were complaining about this new upstart.
Ding-dings,
So Prabhupada writes, and this is, to give it a historic context. Here in the United States, we had the peaceful movement of Martin Luther King Jr., and he created the nonviolent peaceful demonstrations here in America. He was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi in India, who led the movement to oust the British and the British rule from India by peaceful demonstrations. Now, this all goes back 500 years earlier to when Lord Chaitanya, he implemented the first peaceful, nonviolent, massive demonstration against the Chankazi. So Prabhupada explains this himself in one of the purports, that here was the origin of the nonviolent demonstrations, the massive demonstrations. And so Prabhupada writes in one of the purports, this is in the Adi Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the 17th chapter, where the story of the Chankazi unfolds. And so he remarks in a commentary, in the present day also, people all over the world may join together in the Krishna conscious movement and protest against the present degraded governments of the world's godless societies, which are based on all kinds of sinful activities. Srimad Bhagavatam states that in the age of Kali, thieves and rogues and fourth-class people who have neither education nor culture capture the seats of governments to exploit the citizens. And in that same purport, Prabhupada goes on to say the only remedy for such conditions is to enhance the Sankirtan movement under the banner of Krishna consciousness and protest against the sinful activities of all the world's governments. The Krishna consciousness movement is not a sentimental religious movement. It is a movement for the reformation of all the anomalies of human society. If people take to it seriously, discharging this duty scientifically as ordered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the world will see peace and prosperity instead of being confused and hopeless under useless governments. So
right. That's the civil disobedience for the right cause.
exactly. So here we have a fantastic tool that can be used as the public chanting of the holy name of Krishna can reform, dispel all of the anomalies that are taking place, all of the the incongruities and the cheating going on and the hypocrisy. But the idea is we need to involve enough people in a massive demonstration. Chaitanya's movement, when he made a demonstration against Chankazi, thousands and thousands of people came out to join Chaitanya's cause and participate in the chanting of the holy name. So
They were
this,
mad too. They were mad. They were very angry, and they ripped up his garden. And the
well,
child
yeah,
scared, as he should be. And that's the only thing. Like whenever there is a dictatorship in America in the world, sometimes they have a tendency to not let go of their post. But when there is massive disobedience, when there is a massive pushback, uh, like in the case recently in South Korea, the prime minister or the president there declared martial law, and the citizens of South Korea, which is a democracy, they stood up and they actually broke into the chambers at the risk of their lives, and the legislators passed a resolution with a majority vote to nullify that martial law decree. And so then he was thrown out of office. So if the people rise up, then it's possible. And Lord Chaitanya is so humble. It's such a nectar pastime because Lord Chaitanya actually reasoned with the Chankazi, and he's called him his nephew. And they spoke on very amicable terms, and they discussed the Quran and meat eating and things like that. And they came to a very amicable solution. And he was converted actually, and now to this day he's worshipped in India because his tomb is worshipped by the Vaishnavas because he turned into a Vaishnava. And that is the power of the humility of Lord Chaitanya. If we could just be humble, like Lord Chaitanya was humble, then we can melt people's hearts because you can't pound it over their heads,
oh,
The way they're doing their government now is like, we're going to send in the forces. We're going to have, they just actually, the Secretary of Defense said you can use machine guns in armed positions in Washington, D.C. now. You can use armed soldiers. And I'm beginning to think, I don't know if they want violence. Maybe they're looking as an excuse to actually crack down even more so that they can nullify the vote in 26. See, this is the problem. Prabhupada was praising democracy, that it was very powerful, but when the leader or executive head, it becomes a authoritarian, uh, then it's very difficult for them to give up.
We lost our.
I know. I was just gonna read this part here.
Oh, okay. You're reading something. Hmm.
Yeah, this is uh, what they wrote about. What Tom Hartman wrote. He said they gerrymander. You know what gerrymandering is?
Yes.
Gerrymandering is kind of like they call it a gerrymander because they draw the maps according to like in Texas, they just did this by forcing a vote on it. They have majority, and they forced a vote to gerrymander 5 new districts in Texas, and unless they had a quorum, they couldn't pass that. So the Democrats left Texas for a while, but they couldn't stay away forever. But then the gerrymander is called a mander because it's like a salamander. It's a really weird shape, and so they want to. There are only 2 congressional districts in Texas now that have a minority majority. In other words, black communities, like in Austin and also in Dallas.
Well,
And so they're going to get.
there are so many people complaining about so many horrific, horrible things that are going on, hypocritical things that are going on, but no one is presenting a real solution.
Yeah,
But
this is
for,
the problem.
we can present the real solution and how to dispel this, all of these horrible things that are going on by massive demonstrations of and chanting of the holy name.
See, that's what we
So
need.
there are unlimited things that we can complain about.
I'm not
But
complaining. I'm just saying that what you were saying about Prabhupada being pleased that there was a democracy. With January, they gerrymander, they purge, the press attacks, and they press attack tightens the screws of democracy until the system is locked and the tyrant holds the only key. In other words, they rig the court system. They've already done that. They rig the 3 branches of government, and then when it's under their full control, he is alone holds the key to unleash the power of the people. And what they want to do is not to give the people any power, to give them hopelessness, to make them hopeless. And so Prabhupada's all of his hope for, after Nixon was demised, may not longer exist. And it's not enough just to say, okay, we're going to go from person to person. We have to have massive disobedience right now in the street.
exactly. But none of the devotee leaders are recognizing the opportunity.
So therefore, we have to preach to them.
So why don't we get back to our screen?
Yeah, sorry.
Let me read you one thing that I found. This is a great quote by Walter Lippmann. Walter Lippmann was one of the outstanding journalists of the 20th century, especially the mid-20th century. And I came across this recently. He said, if what is right and wrong is determined by what each individual feels, then we are outside the bounds of civilization. So Walter Lippmann said that in 1955.
That was
But
the year I was born.
excuse me?
That's my birth year.
Oh, okay.
That was 70 years ago, exactly.
So what's happening is that, over the decades, both the right and the left have watered down the morals of democracy, the morals of good civilization. They've watered these things down. And so when things become degraded, when things
I wouldn't call it that's a false equivalency. I think the Democrats, ever since the 1930s, since the New Deal and the FDR's Great Society, they have been for the principle of democracy.
Yeah,
And
I'm not talking about Republicans or Democrats. I'm talking
we're
about
talking about the watering down. You said that each side is equally to blame.
I'm talking about the far right and the far left.
Yeah, but what do you
That,
mean by
that
that?
doesn't mean
What do you
the
say?
politicians.
You a
Let me
blanket
just finish my
statement?
point over here,
Sure.
because I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about even the far left has degraded and demoralized American culture by presenting free sexual activities, open drugs. You know, this is the workings, the dealings of the hippies. On one hand, they're demoralizing society. On the other hand, the Christian right is demoralizing society by saying that um, if we just follow, if we just accept Jesus as our Savior, we don't really have to follow his teaching. This is another demoralization of society.
Yeah,
So,
I
so
think Vedic society, they allowed prostitution, didn't they?
yes, but
That was legal back then. In fact, it was encouraged.
so yeah, but so the thing is that there are the demoralization and the decay of society is coming from both far right and far left extremes. This is my point. And so, whatever the politicians may say all sorts of sweet things about religion, but even that's they're working under the framework of pseudo religion, and they're presenting themselves as religionists when they're actually anti-religionists and anti-moral principles.
That's what it says in the 12th canto, in the symptoms of Kali Yuga. There'll be false, charlatans or heretics that claim to be religious, wear the dress of religion, just like a demon in devotee dress, Prabhupada used to say.
Uh-huh.
They have all the accoutrements of religion. In fact, I think our president did an AI-generated figure of himself as the Pope.
Mm.
After the old Pope died, he wanted to be the Pope.
And
So, is he
so
qualified?
my final point on this, I'm getting to a specific point.
Right.
Because when society becomes degraded and everything is demoralized, people really don't know what what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's an opportunity for a charlatan to grab hold of power.
It's
And so
a vacuum. It's a
what
vacuum.
happens now is that before, the Walter Lippmann was saying that right and wrong is determined by the individuals, what they feel.
Right.
But now it's even worse than that, because right and wrong in our present situation and environment is determined. Right and wrong is only determined by one person. You
Right.
see, by what one person feels who holds the office in the White House. So
You know how they mix up the determination between right and wrong? They lie. They lie continuously. And Bhumi said, Mother Bhumi is the goddess of earth. She said, I can bear the weight of many, many things, like mountains and oceans, but I can't bear the weight of one liar. Because what lying does is it confuses the citizenry to the extent where they don't know who's telling the truth. They throw up their hands and say it doesn't matter anymore, and that allows the authoritarians to come in and take over the whole government, because the citizens are no longer they're not even involved. They say it doesn't matter what we say, and practically they don't believe anything that anybody says anyway. They're trying to rewrite the truth. All the
well,
American history in the Smithsonian Institute, all the museums, all the libraries, they're banning the books. They're throwing the history of slavery, because they think it makes America look bad. But what they're actually doing is it makes certain racists feel uncomfortable. So they purge that from all of the libraries, the African Americans, you know, they had an Onion headline. The Onion's from Madison. You're from Madison. The Onion used to have a print edition. They actually went back in print recently, but the Onion had an edition or a headline that said, "The Smithsonian will open again for the African American history, but everybody has to wear a blindfold
Mm.
when they go in to that exhibit."
Right. Because we've lost sight of the truth. Truth is now become just arbitrary.
Yeah,
Right or wrong has now become arbitrary and is left up to the opinion of one person sitting in the White House.
the alternative facts, they called it. Kellyanne Conway called it alternative facts.
But the thing is this,
In people, this is not the way. Have you ever heard of a philosopher named Hannah Arendt? Hannah Arendt. She's
yes.
She was a philosopher, Jewish philosopher, I think, in Germany,
Right.
and she fled Germany, but she was brilliant. And she said that a political system that's based on lies is very toxic, and it will never work because then the citizens can't choose. And that's what Goebbels, you know, he was the propaganda minister for Hitler, and he coined the word a big lie. If you tell a lie that's big enough and outrageous enough, and you tell it often enough, people will think it's the truth. And you know, I said this in my Facebook post, and Nityananda said, you know, they're trying to change the Smithsonian. They're trying to rewrite history. And there's a whole book by Jason Stanley called "How Fascism Rewriting the History of the Truth." You know, and also 1984 talked about that. How they tried to truth is fiction, history or knowledge is ignorance, and they have all these. It's like the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that you know, that religion is irreligion and irreligion is religion. And they get it all mixed up, you know. And Bob Dylan said the same thing. He said, "What's bad is good. What's good is bad. What's bad is good. You'll find out when you reach the top. You're on the bottom."
Yeah, and
So
also
that's what they're doing. They're twisting everything up and making it. It's just based on ignorance. They don't know the truth, and they're trying to bewilder people so that they'll give up hope and they won't have any self-determination.
and
So that's
Krishna
why I
says
think
in the
democracy is
Bhagavad
important.
Gita,
I mean, you can
Krishna
look at it in
says,
different ways. You know, 10th class men are being elected by third class men. They don't know the truth either. And so, like, there's one pretty famous guy named H.L. Mencken back in 100 years ago wrote for
well,
the Baltimore Sun. He said, you know, Americans will reach their best desire, and they'll finally, in the end point of democracy will be that they elect a downright narcissistic fool and a moron to the highest presidency.
well,
You know, he wrote that over 100 years ago, right around
when you
Bhaktisiddhanta's time.
talked about ignorance in the Bhagavad Gita, the
I can't
definition,
hear you, Prabhu.
no? Can you hear me now?
I still can't hear you. Oh, wait.
Am I on? Hello? Hare Krishna.
I
Hare
can.
Krishna. Hare
Sorry
Krishna.
about that.
Huh?
Yeah, my main speaker just went out. I'm using an alternative speaker. Go ahead.
Okay. So, am I still being recorded?
Oh yeah, it was recording. It's just my speaker went out. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, but like you had said earlier about the ignorance and the the modes of material nature, those who are in ignorance don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. And
Right.
so we have this situation where people who don't know what is to be done are doing all sorts of horrific and horrible and foolish things that will lead to the destruction of, actually, it's leading to the destruction of the civilization. But the thing is, we don't want to establish we don't want to reestablish the political system that was here before, devotees want to impose a new understanding of what is Dharma, and the principles should be guided by what is Dharma and what is adharma. And so the four principles of Dharma are very important to disseminate in this particular time: truthfulness, compassion, internal and external cleanliness, and self-sacrifice. And so it's a very opportunistic time for the devotees right now, because we can help people work past these horrific events that are going on in our country. So,
but how do you grab their attention, though? That's the main thing. When you speak about Dharma and our Dharma, they have no idea of what you're talking about. There's a cultural war going on right now, and the Republicans have been winning for about 50 years. They've been, ever since the Southern strategy of Nixon, they have used these talking points and kind of won over. Like, they're talking about welfare queens. Ronald Reagan talked about welfare queens, and it's usually based on racism. And so that is being revived now. It's becoming a racist administration that has to have the othering of people. These people don't belong here. These people are not white.
Well, they're looking for a variety of scapegoats.
Yeah, everybody needs a scapegoat. And that's the Germans had the Jews, and they just picked it. Hitler admitted that he did that because you have to have a fight. So,
well, I was reading a book recently and about women who lived through Nazi Germany, and one of them said that she saw the events of Kristallnacht. She was out where the German Gestapos, they were smashing the windows of the Jewish business in downtown areas. And they were dragging out the Jews and the shopkeepers and beating them.
Yeah.
And so she realized that this is the end of their civilized society, when people are allowed to act like this and just randomly do horrible things.
Well, see, all these ICE agents now. There was just a raid at a Mexican restaurant up in Cranberry, which is north of Pittsburgh, about 20 miles. And they arrested and detained about 5 Mexicans at this Mexican restaurant. They took all the food, and without charges, they were just working there. And they have video of them stealing the food and the equipment, going out the back door. So this is the same thing. The same thing is going on, because these masked men, they don't have any identification. They're just like this SS, the brown shirts in Germany. Mm-hmm. They're doing these things without any authority, and they don't even have to. I mean, usually, if to be a member of the National Guard, you need to have some kind of education. But they're putting anybody in there now, as far as like their qualifications. Everybody should be qualified for their particular caste. If you're a Shudra, you shouldn't be made into a Kshatriya, right? I mean, and all these people are, they advertise them. Even you and your buddies, your high school dropouts, you can be an ICE agent and you get a $50,000 bonus. And
they're making more than the teachers are making.
Yeah,
$50,000 a year, they're making more than
somebody that doesn't have a job. They can just go around and round up some immigrants, and they even have a picture of a van, like an old school van with a bunch of. Wouldn't this bad boy be good to like get some of these illegals out, And but like the thing is with this one article that I read yesterday, Jim Wallace was talking about the idea of. I've got a T-shirt that says "Omega Dei," Imago Dei. That's a Latin term. It means in the image of God. Prabhupada said that too. He said, we're all created in God's image because he has 2 hands. Krishna has 2 hands. So Doesn't matter if you're brown or black, whatever color you are, to discriminate on somebody who has just on the basis of their skin color, if they're a creature of God, is actually an insult to God himself. It's not a matter of politics. It's actually an offense to the image of God himself, because the human form of life is a very precious platform where we can rise to the. So we have to teach people not only about Dharma and Adharma, that's very important, but we also have to, first of all, teach them that they're not the body. And I've always experienced in Krishna consciousness that the devotees have this idea that there is no black or white. They don't really discriminate. If a black body devotee come in, just like like most people freak out, when a black person comes in a restaurant and say, give me my mother F and F iced tea or something like that. That's what Bill O'Reilly thought that black people would say in Harlem. But devotees don't have that idea of that prejudice, prejudging somebody based on their skin color, because they're on this platform of spirit soul. They have equal vision. But you see my hat here? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now,
Yes.
and it says, what do you oppose about those things? Now, equity, you see, equal vision is one of the aspects of the Bhagavad Gita. We should have equal vision for all living entities, a cow, a dog eater, an elephant, a Brahmin. All these different entities are equal just because they have different body, but especially human beings. So it's actually that idea of imago Dei, in the image of God, is actually in the first chapter of the first book of the Bible in Genesis. And so it's a very important principle to base the idea of we're not this body, but they're using bodily identification and racial division, saying this is us and this is them. Prahlad Maharaj, they tried to indoctrinate Prahlad in this idea of this is my friend and this is my enemy. But Prahlad was only 5 years old. He wasn't buying into that Machiavellian politics. He was smarter than all of them. He's probably, that 5-year-old boy, Prahlad Maharaj, is probably smarter than all of the politicians combined in this country. Doesn't matter what, sect or party they belong to, because he actually sees things as they are. So we have to preach purely and from beyond the bodily platform. That's Krishna Consciousness 101 is we're not the body, right?
Well, that's exactly the first thing that Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita,
Exactly.
second chapter, of course.
That's Krishna Consciousness 101.
That's spirituality 101, to understand that we're not the body, that we're eternal spirit soul.
Yeah.
But that's
we got our work cut out for us. Sometimes I think that there's not this is such a dire situation right now in this country that it's going to take a massive uprising, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But it's going to have to come from the people. And the people, I don't really understand why we can rail against democracy then when that's the only thing we have in this country.
Well, Prabhupada wasn't against democracy. Even when he came to New Vrindaban, the devotees were saying, shouldn't we have a monarchy? And Prabhupada said, well, this is the Kali Yuga. Monarchy is not going to work. There's no leaders that are trained up in the monarchical process.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's talked about the leader of the king has to be the head of society, or the Kshatriyas class. They have to be trained in the Varnashram system, and they have to be educated. In other words, they have to be trained up. But everyone's born a Shudra, and Shudras are, even this movement though, it wasn't really meant for like first class men. It was meant for like third class, fifth class men. That's us, and he rescued us. And sometimes he's training up a certain class of men to become first-class brahmanas. But we've got a long way to go, And I'm
Well,
at
the thing is,
practically the end of my life, at 70 years old. I'm like a fossil, and the fossil's about ready to become extinct. So Prabhupada came to America at 70, so I hope I still have a few years left in me so I can try to execute his desire and his mission.
Prabhupada wanted to empower all of his disciples. In,
Right.
in a letter, this is from, let's see if I have it here someplace. There was a letter from 1969 where Prabhupada is talking about that I wish that all of my disciples become bona fide spiritual masters. And that's a very early letter that he says that in 1969 or even earlier. So the thing is that Prabhupada also talks about neighborhood gurus, that he wanted thousands and tens of thousands and millions of devotees who can be gurus in their various neighborhoods or they're in various environments throughout the United States and throughout the
That's
world.
interesting. I've never seen that before. He said that neighborhood guru. I mean, Lord Chaitanya wanted Guru Vagya Tara Ede, you be guru and try to liberate everyone in this land. So that doesn't mean maybe not like a ISKCON guru. It means just in your Prabhu Datta Desh, which means whatever, we're talking about
Right.
um, uh,
Wherever you find yourself.
Kāla, pātra, Deśa, the locality where you're in, you be guru in that locality, and that will be fulfilling Lord Chaitanya, because he says, I am the only gardener. How many fruits can I alone pick? I want you to be gardener, and you distribute these fruits of love of Godhead to everybody. You be guru. And so that's Lord Chaitanya's order. So Srila Prabhupada picked up that order, and based on his desire to fulfill his spiritual master's desire, he wasn't changing anything. It's really interesting that Prabhupada was so humble that he wrote one thing in Washington D.C. on July 5th, the day after he said, we simply as canvassers of Krishna, we are preaching Krishna consciousness. And we say, sir, Krishna says like this, you do like this. That's all. If you like, you can do. Otherwise, let us do our own business. If there is a little success, it is due to this secret. That's all. We don't speak anything which is not in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that he is supreme. We are preaching, yes, Krishna is supreme. That's it. So we're not saying anything different. We're just, repeating what the disciplic succession and Krishna are saying and Srila Prabhupada is saying, and we're following in the footsteps of these previous acharyas exactly. We're not manufacturing anything. We're simply repeating. So that is the secret of success. We're not presenting our own philosophy, our own politics or anything. This is simply Krishna consciousness as it is. I think that's the key to actually convincing people. And Prabhupada said, just like you're talking about the whole idea of Sankirtan and the whole idea of chanting Hare Krishna, Prabhupada, when he was on the way from Pittsburgh to New Vrindaban in 1976, he noted that this is the way I started Krishna consciousness 10 years ago. I didn't immediately say, you do this, you do that, You take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna, and go away. Go home. Wasn't presenting any philosophy or anything like this and that. I wasn't saying any rules and regulation. You just come and take prasad and chant and dance with us. And he said, who will not take, they'll take. So this is like the neighborhood guru is opening preaching centers like the one we have here in Pittsburgh.
Yes. I'm so very impressed with the Pittsburgh Kirtan Center.
And people love it. They go there, and like this young lady that I met before the pandemic, she felt like she was like, and she comes back, even though she's like a big real estate agent now, 8 years later, she still is coming back for more because she felt like, once you have contact with the devotees in prasadam and chanting, you cannot forget that. It comes back. Krishna's like, you ever heard of that folk tale called Briar Rabbit and Uncle Remus? They
Uh-huh.
had that little tar baby in the garden, and the more you interact with the tar baby, the more you get stuck to it. Krishna's like that tar baby because the more you interact with Krishna, you can't get away from him. So it's kind of like a same analogy of the tar baby. That's kind of a racist trope, but anyway, it kind of fits because Krishna is black and the tar baby is black too, and you can't get away from him. Once you get stuck to him, he'll never let you go. It's wonderful. So I think we should probably wrap it up here. It's been an hour, I think. It's 7 o'clock now. You have any
Uh-huh.
concluding words?
Well, just that Prabhupada wanted many devotees to step up and to take the initiative to become gurus and teachers and present this. So the Krishna consciousness movement is it's based on education. We need to educate people, like you were saying, on we're not the body,
Right.
but there's a right now in the circumstances we are in the fact that the truth is being all muddled up and that there's no right or wrong, an absolute right or wrong. It's all based on the authority of certain individuals.
Yeah,
So we do need to present
the
the
truth.
teachings of the Dharma.
Right, exactly. That is not the Dharma is the same, and it's been the same for billions of years. It doesn't change. And anybody that thinks they have a different Dharma, they're bogus because they're not really representing the real Dharma. The Dharma is always the same. It's
Well, the
always the same.
Dharma, yeah, the Dharma is like, the sun is the same whether it's in India or Japan or
Yeah,
United States. If it's in India, it's not a Hindu sun, or if it's
right.
rising over Japan, it's not a Japanese sun.
That's what I
So the
remember.
sun is the same. And
Prabhupada
so,
Bhaktipad was listening to the news in his room and that house he had across the ridge there, and he was listening to the news, and they were talking about the Jewish soul. He just started laughing because you don't have a Jewish soul. You don't have any more than you have an Indian sun or an American sun. The sun is the sun, and it can be clouded. When Lord Chaitanya was listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days, he was just sitting there listening because of respect. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was preaching the Mayavadi Śāstra-cakṣusā philosophy and was clouding the real the message of Bhagavad Dharma. The message of Dharma is clear as the sun in the sky, but it can be clouded by all this other nonsense, and then you become an atheist if you listen to the Śāstra-cakṣusā, the Mayavad interpretation of the truth. Just like Vivekananda. Vivekananda didn't make any devotees. He doesn't have any followers. He was preaching this Mayavad philosophy, and he is eating meat, and he doesn't even know who Krishna is. Half of these so-called gurus don't even know who Krishna is, yet they're claiming to be big, big gurus. And so we have to actually understand who is a real guru. And then when we understand who's real guru, we have to follow that guru, follow that person. And when we follow that person, Mahajana Yena Gatasa Panta, we follow in the footsteps of the guru, then we can become guru. But it's interesting because I was reading this, the Manasika, the Instruction of the Mind by Raghunath Das Goswami, and he was
uh-huh.
saying Bhakti Vigyan Goswami wrote a chapter on the third verse, and he said, if you think you're a guru, you're not a guru. Immediately, as soon as you think you're a guru, then you're immediately disqualified as a guru. He said to be a guru means to follow in the footsteps of the other guru. Like Prabhupada said, I have no qualification. People say, thank you so much for starting this movement. He said, if I have any qualifications, just that I've tried to follow in the footsteps and the instructions of my spiritual master. That is guru. Not that you think you're a big, big guru, you know.
Yeah, but in this age, no one knows who is a real guru and who is an imposter guru. That's
Yeah.
why Prabhupada says the Vedic society is based on the principle of love between husband and wife, father and son, the king and the citizens, and so on. Civilization must be founded on love, not law. So when we begin to we have to respect each other. We have to acknowledge each other. We have to not minimize the general public, and we have to respect the general public and present Krishna consciousness in a loving, genuine way.
Right.
We
And
have
that
to
is
be
already being
the
done.
ambassador of love for Krishna.
Yeah,
So
Krishna loves everybody. So we have to reflect Krishna's love for his living entity.
exactly. So
Krishna,
this,
Krishna was very, we have to take compassion on Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is so upset that so many people are not taking to Krishna consciousness, and he's on anxiety. And Haridas Thakur was trying to relieve his anxiety by saying, my dear Lord, you know, this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is going to deliver all these living entities. And so that's a real devotee, somebody who tries to minimize the anxiety of the Lord who is suffering because he sees all the living entities suffering. That's how Haridas and Dvaitacharya, they saw everybody in that area were not devotees, and they were praying to Lord Chaitanya. He was offering a little Ganges water and tulsi leaf back to the Ganges, and he was crying loudly for Lord Chaitanya's appearance.
so I think devotees, they need to really connect with Krishna within to
Yeah,
be able to express that love to the public. And
right.
that's
That's
what
the only way.
the public needs to see, that love and that respect from the devotees.
Right.
Prabhupada says we can respect anyone, we can respect even an ant. Devotees shouldn't be minimizing anyone's you know, nowadays people get into disagreements, and what happens is that if one of the things that they do, even I've experienced, even devotees have done this to me, they don't want to carry on a rational conversation about an issue. They if I don't agree with something, then they immediately try to assassinate, minimize my personality.
Ad
They
hominem.
call me liberal or woke
Yeah,
or
yeah. So
libtard.
this
This
woke,
I've this
this
I've
woke.
gotten from the devotees.
Yeah, there's a lot of devotees who are in a certain cult. It's kind of like a cult within a cult.
Yeah,
They're in
but
this
anyways,
authoritarian cult.
this we need to reform that mentality and then take that loving, respectful mood out to the public.
You know, one thing that I think the woke people have not done and are not very successful at is actually fighting back on a cultural basis. I think there's a couple of examples of them doing that right now. You know, Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, and he's pretending like he's talking in the same way that Trump is talking, and it's driving all the pundits and Fox News crazy because he's saying this is childish. Why are you talking like that? And then in the same breath, practically, they're saying you're talking like Donald Trump. So which is it? It's like a cognitive dissonance on their behalf, and they can't figure it out. And also, South Park is the Comedy Central show that has a $1.5 billion contract with Paramount, which took over Comedy Central as well. It's part of the Paramount family, and they fired Stephen Colbert because he was speaking out. Stephen Colbert is one of the late night talk show hosts that was very woke, so to speak. You know,
Well, I don't know if he's woke, but he's very practical. He's a very, rational, practical human being who doesn't want to see the Constitution undermined. I wouldn't say that that was woke. I,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, it's like the thing is that they don't, the authoritarians don't care about the Constitution or any other kind of rules. They just care about power, and they'll
uh,
use racism or any other kind of way to culturally attack the whole idea. J.D. Vance got up in front of a conservative venue and was saying that exactly what Putin had been saying. Education, wars are won by teachers. Wars are won by teachers. Vladimir Putin said that. And he said, J.D. Vance was saying we have to attack these universities like Harvard, like Columbia, like these major Ivy League institutions because people respect them and we have our own agenda. We can't have any other truth besides us. This is our agenda. We, just like you said, there's only one thing that you can agree with. You have to agree with the Christian nationalism and any kind of other philosophy, any kind of other race, any kind of other gender. Unless you're a white Christian male, you are not. You're relegated, or queer or transsexual. You are relegated as a second-class citizen in this country now. That includes the Hare Krishnas.
yes, unfortunately, once they get through with the refugees, and once they get through with the gays and establishing themselves as the overlords, they'll also come after the idol worshiping Krishnas as
That
well.
something he said that something very serious is going to have to happen before the devotees in general will wake up to the fact that
Mhm.
that something personal will have to happen to them in order to wake them up to the fact
And,
that, I
but
mean, we
the
read
devotee
stuff that
should wake up before that.
we have to wake up before that happens because then it will be too late because they already have a stranglehold on the system and
Right.
it'll always be past. It's like global warming. Once you get to the point of 102, like point whatever above the whatever that number is, it's a point of no return.
Mhm.
So the signs are already there that this whole civilization, Prabhupada was saying something very grave. He said the whole civilization, people will just commit suicide.
It was, he mentioned that it was a suicidal culture, yes.
And they won't be able to take it anymore because it's just so difficult, I mean, at the end of Kali Yuga, people will be uh, you know, um, eating their own children pretty much. But that's another 427,000 years from now. But I don't hope I'm not around for that event. The whole main thing is to get out of
Anyways,
the world.
well, let's wind down, and it's a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. And we need to talk about these things because nobody else is hardly. I was just in New York City, and Urmila, you know Urmila?
Yeah.
She's actually the heir of the Manischewitz fortune. But
Mm.
she's like a very big preacher now. She was on the Zoom class and she was talking about, humility and tolerance. There was the story of Bhrigu Muni where Bhrigu Muni kicked Vishnu in the chest.
Hmm.
And, we have to be that tolerant and that humble. But, I don't see very many devotees talking about the world situation. And that's why I kind of started this, and I hope I can grow it. We just have to stick to Prabhupada's example and follow in his footsteps because he was also very much concerned about what was going on, and we can actually change things. People might be influenced by lies and illusion, but Srimad Bhagavatam is the literature that can distinguish lies from illusion, reality from illusion. So if we just use that as a guidepost, the Srimad Bhagavatam and Prabhupada's example, the way he presented it, then we can actually help other people see and be a less in anxiety because people are suffering right now. People are very much afraid.
Yes. And we need to inject Krishna consciousness into every sphere of activity. Let me just read you one final thing over here. This is from a lecture in 1974 in Los Angeles. Prabhupada says, we can take part in everything: politics, sociology, philanthropy, so many things, provided that by taking part in that department of activities, we can advance our Krishna consciousness. So this is we have an opportunity to inject, for the welfare of people in general, to inject Krishna consciousness in every sphere of influence: political, scientific, cultural, agricultural, the dynamics and the workings of society and how society is governed. So the devotees at this time have to take advantage of that and not think that it's just some political discussion that
It's
we're
not
having.
anything outside of Prabhupada was talking about how devotees have to be expert. Like Raghunath Das Goswami, he was only interested in Krishna consciousness. But when the time arose where he had to be a little bit, diplomatic, he knew exactly what to do. Devotees should be like that as well. It's not just that you're just all spiritual all the time and you don't have to pay attention to anything else. It was also, Prabhupada said, here's another quote that related to the one that you just said: this movement can solve all the problems of life, all the problems of the world: social, political, philosophical, religious, economical, everything
Right.
can be solved by Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada
Mm.
said that. Mukunda Goswami quoted that. And, it's we have to take a broad vision
Mm.
of everything and include everything. That
Right.
means,
Prabhupada's not rejecting anything.
right, we have to be broad-minded. Prabhupada said that his spiritual master, he could talk on any subject. He could speak, and he was so advanced. Even his neophyte devotees, the great big pundits in India, were afraid of even his neophyte followers because they were so, strong in their presentation. They're not strong in their own behalf, but they were following in the footsteps. They knew the Dharma, and they could, just like Prabhupada himself, I can go against any big philosopher, big scientist, because I have Krishna. It's just like a child holding the hand of the father. I can talk to anybody, even though I'm not a big scientist. I can challenge you because we have the truth. And we can say, life didn't come from chemicals. Life, it comes from life.
Well, that's a good place to end.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
And take care of yourself.
Yeah, I'll try
Hare Krishna.
to do more than dig a hole and fill it back up again.
Okay.
I'll talk to you next week, hopefully.
Okay.
Krishna
Take
willing.
care.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Radhe.
Radhe.